if the GPS goes out, you can be like, we've got to hire people that are 55 and older so they can read a map.
You're listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, where HIPAA and humor collide to make learning fun. Your delightful hosts are Donna Grindle and David Sims. Relax, HIPAA help is on the way.
Welcome to episode 465 of the Help Me with HIPAA podcast. My name is David Sims of HIPAA for MSPs, and joining me is Donna Grindle. Carden, what's up?
Oh, well, me, more than you.
Yep. I'm down here at the Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
Redneck Riviera, right?
Yeah, that it is. So I think the big thing nowadays is you never know if you're going to run into an alligator on the beach or not. So,
Ooh, I can see you going,
yeah.
Hey, let me look at that.
Yeah, and apparently the man of war are now washing up on the beach.
Oh, you stay away from them things.
Obviously, that's a problem.
Yes, I kind of stay out of that water, stay off the beach even. They have a very nice pool, I'm sure, at the hotel, as Kristen says. Yeah,
I am not and have never been a fan, probably because I'm from the Jaws era. Never been a fan of going very far out in the water. And then I was out several years ago with my wife, and we were, I would say, knee to thigh high water, so maybe 3 feet deep, and a shark swam between us.
And you left her high and dry.
I was like, peace out. I ain't got to run fast, but I can run faster than you. That's when she's like, so I didn't start yelling shark until I was already out of the water. So needless to say, she gave me a hard time about that. She's like, you didn't even warn me. You just took off.
I think that's fair on her part.
I was like, yeah. And then I have to remind her of that time we were at a fireworks display, which I should probably say was a redneck fireworks display, so you can imagine.
Yeah. They
had this big, huge thing that they had built that holds all the skyrockets and bottle rockets, and the mortars is really what they were doing. But somehow, somebody did something, and it knocked it over.
Oh, no.
And was firing mortars into the crowd.
Of course.
And so I turned to her to tell her to run, and I realized she is 100 yards away. So I swear, every time I tell the story, I was like, she teleported. I've seen her run. She's not that fast. I don't know how she did that. But she was gone.
Oh, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
So anyway, which this kind of goes a little bit into our topic for today, which is always be on the lookout.
Always BOLO, man. Always. You never know when a story is going to give you something important. Never know.
So we're going to cover some very interesting stories today. This is a mix up, a mixed match, or whatever you want to call it, a mixtape of greatest hits. We're going to talk about some things that are going on right now or recently, and some of them are funny and some of them are scary.
Yeah, like we like to do.
Yeah. But certainly they all scream, you need to be careful, and you need to always be looking at or thinking about everything that could possibly happen.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that's our thing is, we're watching the news stories and constantly saying, wait a minute, now, have I considered that? Or have the things that I have considered going to cover me for that? Maybe I haven't considered that, but because of something else, I should be good. But I'm always thinking that through.
Yeah, because every so often it's like, oh, that's a novel idea. I hadn't thought about that one. let's add that to the risk analysis.
Mm-hmm. So, yeah, sometimes it just happens to a client, like the exploding toilet, and we put that on there just to trigger thought.
Yeah, absolutely.
You got to think about other things. So,
yeah. All right, so before we dive into that, I wanted to say, as always, thanks for listening. Be sure to share it out and leave us a review. We appreciate it. All right, let's dive into the HIPAA Say What, because there's some things happening, because you've heard us talk a bunch about the online tracking and what was going on with that, well, there's been a change.
There's now more going on with that.
Yeah.
So all we know so far, though, is because we had talked about in the fall, American Hospital Association gone together with some hospitals, and they had filed a lawsuit saying, this not going to cut it. You can't do this. It's not really, you're outside the bounds of HIPAA. And net is, so they have an order that just came out recently, like 19, 20 or something like that of June, that says, yeah, you're right, AHA, that's not allowed. That's outside the authority. So I'm not sure. I haven't read any of it. This is what's gonna matter here is what HHS says, and we haven't heard that yet.
Mm-hmm.
Because the big thing is, are they going to say that they will appeal it, or are they going to say, thank you, I just needed somebody to tell me that so that I can move on. I got more important things, which is what you and I hope they do.
Right.
I understand that their job is to interpret the law and define the guidance of how the regulations should be applied. And if you read the law like lawyers do, I could see where they would get there and say, this is PHI. Now, and err on the side of caution because we're talking about patient privacy and the potential for damages and all this kind of stuff. And it all started, I think, with a patient complaint. So it's not completely outside the realm of believability anyway, and I choose to kind of go down that theory because out of the blue this thing shot, and I know there was patient complaints about it. Mm-hmm. So I think they're tied together. I don't know that I can prove that. However, the fact that it's how you read the law is what matters. And they are always obligated, whatever gives the patient more rights. That's the way they try to do things. Whatever gives the patient more rights. That's the way they did it. They even went to the FTC. And this is why I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen. Because they even went to the FTC and said, y'all tell us what, hey, come here and look at this. Like David and the alligator.
Count his teeth.
Are they really fast? But the net of it is we have to see, for now, technically, that worrying about web tracking technologies, I would still tell my clients you should worry about them, but don't just get loosey-goosey. And I think that has a lot to do with it is let's pay attention to it properly. Because if you don't pay attention to it, you're going to start getting stuff in there that would be no doubt that it would be PHI and be a problem. So anyway, we'll wait and see, but I'm just hoping that they're like, okay, moving on.
Yeah. We've talked about it enough.
Well, we at least have a resolution. Now we can move on. And
right.
So anyway, that's what I'm hoping for, is that is the resolution.
Yep. All right. So now we're going to dive into always be on the lookout.
BOLO.
BOLO.
Okay. So I have a collection of stories, and some of them I found, some of them you found, and I just crammed them all together. So I don't know about the order. I've tried to work with the order. We'll see how it goes, and we're going to end with the Alright, so the first one is a story in the Hacker News. Hackers exploit legitimate websites to deliver bad space Windows backdoor.
Yeah.
So the key here is that it's a legitimate website. Okay, so what we want you to realize when we're talking about this is you have to worry about both pieces. You have to worry about your users being the clickers and falling for the trick, or your website being the thing that gets hacked and is delivering it. You don't want to be that person either. So you got to worry about the normal, make sure your staff knows don't update browsers a certain way, and also let's make sure our website is secured so that we don't deliver this. And I can assure you it's not pretty when your website gets out of your control.
Yeah. It's also a cautionary tale of don't make assumptions. Like, you go to a legitimate site. We do what we always tell people, right? Don't click on the thing. Go directly to their website and log in. Well, you go to the site, and then maybe your security says there's a problem. You're like, this is the actual site. There's not a problem.
Yeah, you get those browser monitor things, and they're, false positives. Yeah, they do, but
Yeah. So it's, just again, a cautionary tale of, hey, when something pops up and says there might be a problem, slow down a little bit. See something, say something, double check, triple check, don't assume.
Well, especially with this one, because so they hack a website, let's say, Dr. Smith's office website gets hacked, and they load this malware in there so that the next time a patient or somebody that is wanting to learn about your office goes to the website, it pops up and tells them, hey, you need to update your browser. So if I trust that website and think that it's telling me that my browser needs things to be able to run the things on that website, and I'm a patient that wants to run things on the website, well, what do you think they're going to do?
Yeah. And a lot of people don't stop even when something pops up on the screen. They just next.
Okay.
Yeah. So, which is one reason why I like that we do people's updates, because it's just easier to say, don't ever do updates. We'll do all the updates.
Yeah.
Instead of them having to decide, is this an update I do or don't do, install, not to install? It's easier for us to do that.
Well, and the other thing is you also have the tool that keeps you from installing things for this reason. Now, would it catch this, you think?
I think it would, because if it's downloading it, then it's going to be scanned as a download. And then, of course, it's probably trying to install something as well. So I think it probably would. And we have some browser extension tools that we use, not universally, because there are some other issues that we have with that. But I think that just the security itself that we have would stop this at some layer, whether it was because it scanned it as a download or because it blocked it as an installable. I think it would catch it.
Well, certainly something. You send your guys and say, will we catch this? But the bottom line is, once it gets there, if it can, that malware then runs and drops this bad space Windows backdoor. And then disappears. So we're not talking about something that's running long term. There's no more I got a virus kind of world happening. It is living off the land, as they say, using tools that you would already have on your computer. But then you got the back doors open. At that point, they can get into that computer and do whatever they want, whenever they want. As long as it's up and running and connected to the internet, it's their computer, and you're allowed to use it as long as they will allow it, is the way you need to look at it. Ooh, that might be a way to get people to understand. I don't care. I don't have anything on my computer. Well, let's look at it this way. The minute they take it over, it's now their computer, no longer yours, and they will continue to allow you to use it until they decide they've gotten all the value out of you. That's essentially how it works.
Oh, yeah.
So there you go, people. Make sure your people know about pop-ups and loading software, and particularly anything from a browser. Even if it is a trusted site, it's the loading of the software that gets you in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
And then please make sure your site is not going to be the one that gets hacked and is spreading it.
Yeah, I was going to say that's the bigger issue, is that we still don't see a lot of websites that are using security.
Yeah.
Or if they are using it, it's like, we've got a security plugin. Yes, but it hasn't been updated in 2 years. So,
yeah, I don't keep that up to date. I don't keep anything up to date.
Yeah.
And it's configured to allow as much as possible.
Yeah. Well, we had a recent website that was interesting because what we found out that none of the plugins were actually showing that updates were available, but they were all 2 to 3 years out of date. And what we found out is whoever developed the site, somehow they were linking back to a GitHub repository. And because of that, it wasn't pulling the plugins from the normal repository. So none of them were saying that they were out of date. I've never seen that happen before.
Looking at the wow, I hadn't seen that either. That's kind of cool. Well, not cool, but cool. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So whoever developed it, I mean, I don't think it was anything malicious. I think they just had this screwy way of doing it, where they used the repositories. And so it's kind of one of those things where, yes, it works, but it's broken, you know?
It's that difference between someone that understands web design and website management and someone understanding security. Mm-hmm. The same thing applies as it does with help desk versus security. They just because you can do one doesn't mean you can do the other. Right.
Yeah. You don't know all the other aspects of what you should be doing or looking for or looking at.
Mm-hmm. I would never say, "Oh, hire me as I can do a website if you know exactly what you want to do. I could build that for you." But am I going to design one and make it all whiz bang and give you ideas and nope. I'll secure it though.
Yeah. Well, we actually have a local website design company that they have us do their hosting and security, because they're like, they recognize, like, we can do a website fine, but hosting and security and all that, that's not our forte. And so they give that to us to do.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Note to self, all you web hosting or web designers, that's the best way to do it. Just pass that off to somebody else. Let that be their specialty.
Mm-hmm.
But also check with, and referencing back to the online tracking, the thing that you don't want is now online tracking. Oh, it's no big deal. Whatever we do on there, we don't have to worry about PHI. If you're collecting and your patients are having communications with you on your website, don't just run willy-nilly. That doesn't give you, it's not free reign. Please don't do that, since we're talking about the websites, and I just had that realization. So anyway, ready to move on to the next one? Because I know you particularly will enjoy the next one, David.
Yeah, I mean, any story about a mouse jiggler, I'm on it.
So over a dozen Wells Fargo employees are fired because they were using mouse jiggler and keyboard simulators to fake that they were at work. And, it's like, well, what were they doing when that was happening? And where did they get that software? I have so many concerns with this, not only as the business owner that, they're faking their work for, but also the software, and if you use, didn't they do it with like a Raspberry Pi? What did they do it with? The staffers made it seem like they were working by simulating this with easy to find devices that trick monitoring software into thinking the user is working. And they use special but easily obtainable tools to create that impression. Apparently, it was like a Raspberry Pi or something like that, but to have more than a dozen of them, somebody said, "Hey, check this out," and then starts making them for everybody.
So this became a problem, with the whole COVID work from home thing. I remember seeing a guy who said, I know you can use these software to do this. However, you can pick up that that's going on, or your employer might see that you've installed this thing that, does the mouse jiggling and keyboard simulation. So he actually developed a piece of hardware that would you put the mouse in, it literally just moved the mouse around. had the gears in it and all that, and it just moved the mouse.
So the effort people go to.
Yeah, it's like they spent more time trying to not work to just get the work done. But it's crazy that people will do that, because my viewpoint on this is a massive integrity issue, and it's theft. If you will steal from your employer, then you should be fired, if not prosecuted. And my folks work from home, and I am very quick to tell them, if you steal from me, which doing something like this is theft, if you steal from me, and I will fire you, and if I can, I will prosecute you, because it's an integrity issue. It's not about, for me, it's not necessarily about them doing something to get out of work. It's about, I'm entrusting you with my clients and PHI and all this other stuff. So integrity is integrity, all the way down to mouse jigglers.
100%. And I think didn't they have a quote in that article? It was, by the way, the article's from Tom's Hardware, and they have some really cool stuff. But they had a quote from Wells Fargo, who said they hold employees to the highest standards and do not tolerate unethical behavior. And you're right. If they're willing to do it and be unethical here, then they're willing to be unethical in other ways.
Yeah. And I'm sure these people would be like, oh, I would never steal money from somebody. But yeah, you are.
Yeah. You don't see it as stealing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it is depending on the expectations set by the business. Some of them may set an expectation that, but again, that's the net of it, is ethical, and integrity matters. And if you're willing to divert in one area, what are you willing to do? So this whole article then says, okay, when I'm evaluating things, how well am I saying the message or spreading the message or setting the example that says, we're going to judge your ethics and integrity regardless of what it is, above and beyond, oh, it's HIPAA. We're not talking about that. We're like, can you be trusted with these things?
Mm-hmm.
And that was, it's like the people who say, well, we run a credit check to make sure before we let them, get access to money and patient records. But then if you don't run the credit check in all the areas where that person could have been in trouble, oh, well, we only run our credit checks locally. Okay, what about the other states? What about the other areas? Yeah. It's the same concept.
Or what about after they've worked there for 5 years?
I know, right?
Yeah. But yeah, this is it's interesting, it's funny, but I hope that when they fired these folks that they remember to promptly remove them from the systems, because they could become disgruntled.
Yeah. Leading to perfect segue, David. You set that one up just like you needed it. So this one, these are the ones that could be so easily avoided.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the thing that's the problem. And that it's an IT services company.
Yeah.
That didn't avoid it. So you want your employees to be gruntled, not disgruntled. I would like gruntled employees, please.
Yeah, so this story comes from Tom's Hardware, and it's not. It did not happen in the United States. This story, however, that does not mean we should ignore it, because a disgruntled ex-employee caused over $600,000 in damages by deleting all 180 test servers from their previous employer. So there's a lot of things that pop into my head, like, okay, there's your disaster recovery plan, there's your backups, there's, all these things that you should have. But man.
Well, in this case, this guy, he worked at National Computer Systems, Southeast Asia. They're in Singapore, but they've got presence all over Southeast Asia, Australia, all over the place. Dude gets fired and thinks that was not fair, that it was supposedly for performance reasons, but the dude said he was doing really well. And he worked in quality control, and part of that job was the ability to, spin up these test servers and then delete them after you run your thing and spin it up again, right? But you were only working on one at a time. And after he's fired between January and March 2023, he just, I don't know, for some reason said, I wonder if I can still log in.
Yeah.
And every now and then there are things where I know if I go try, I can probably still log in, but I just don't want to know. But he wanted to know. And the thing is that he gets in, so they don't remove him. When they fire him, he's fired. It's not like he quit. Fired. If you fire somebody, you definitely want to remove them. Like, before you fire them, if possible. So he then discovers he can get in, and it's sometime after he was fired, but I think like a couple of months even, and he's able to get in. So then he starts, screwing around and realizes, hey, I can still delete servers and build them. So he goes out and Googles how to write a script that would delete all the servers, and then developed it and tested it on their network. I mean, like the whole time doing it all there, nothing triggered anything until he launched the script, and all 180 were gone.
Yeah, but it's like we say often, which is when an employee has the ability to do things, that is not unusual behavior. And because they hadn't removed this guy's account, then it was doing things that was normal behavior for that account. Yeah.
There's so many things, that you want to question. Was it normal because of when they logged in? Was it normal, the amount of time, or do they not have something where you got to jiggle your mouse?
Well, this is one of the times where something like a SIM product, I think, is good, because it can look at those types of things and alert. And yeah, they can be noisy, but man, there are so many things that it catches that you're like, ooh, I didn't realize that was happening. I mean, we just had one today. We had to contact the client and said, did you know that that Biff over here has set up an email forwarding to his personal account? You might not want that to happen. Now, whether or not it should happen, don't know, but we wouldn't have known had we not had that SIM product in place that looks at that. And every time a rule's created or a forwarding happens or anything like that, we get notified.
Cool. See, that's the kind of stuff. So again, gruntled, not so much. Disgruntled, very bad. And how you track that and make sure that your onboarding and offboarding, or arrivals and departures, as I like to say, is handled properly. We need to document the arrival so that when they depart, we know we've at least gotten all of that. And we need to document that they may have additional access because they changed jobs and those kind of things. And next week's episode, we're going to talk about a little of this, about other ways that you can manage this, or at least make it less onerous. The bottom line, though, is you cannot overlook this. This is just too many times a disgruntled employee with access to something that they shouldn't have access to. People gonna be people.
Mm-hmm.
That's all you can say. That's all you can say. So speaking of people and being able to access things remotely.
Yeah.
Yuck. So you want to talk about this one? Explain it at least, what it means? And then I'll explain the other part.
Yeah, so this is from Asus, or Asus, depending on how you want to pronounce this. But they had a patch for a critical authentication bypass vulnerability, which would, allow attackers to gain unauthorized access. So yeah, when I saw this, that I'm immediately running around. Make sure nobody has Asus stuff.
I know, and I mean it's specific models, but how are you going to know?
Yeah. And this goes back to the work from home thing. Like, I know within our business environment, we don't use home routers, but people that work from home probably use home routers. And, honestly, it would be a good idea that if your staff is working from home, that you inventory that just like you do anything else. Mm-hmm. And you have a list of, okay, what do you use? And most people don't know. So you may have to send me a picture of what it is you got stuff plugged into. But to have that list, to know what they're using when things like this pop up, then it gives you the ability to say, we have somebody who's using that product, and you can take action.
Well, or at least know, for example, who do they get their internet from? The one we talked about the other day where it was a Windstream. It appeared to be a Windstream issue. So we would at least know that if they were the ones using it. And it makes for at least an easier understanding of your exposure.
Right.
Now, is it easy to do? No. But you can send out a survey for your home. You're going to work from home. You have to complete these. And if you can't complete these, then we got to do some stuff. And here are the things you need to do so that you have it available and you can reference that should some of these pop up. And a point of reference, on June 20th, Census, which is a group that monitors these things, observed over 147,000 exposures of Asus routers that are potentially vulnerable to CVE 2024-3080, meaning this problem, which means you can take control of the router without authenticating. This is big.
Yeah.
And then they note that it is likely an underestimation. It's at least that many. So, I it's kind of like, well, how many is going to be involved in Change Healthcare? I don't know, but it's going to be a bunch. That's it. We know it's going to be a bunch. And it's not something to ignore. Make sure you don't have them. But an easy way, send out a form so it populates into a spreadsheet, and you make sure everybody fills it out, and they have to complete it. And, just start with what brand or who do you get your internet connection from, and then is that the only router you use? And if not, what additional one do you use? What's the make and model? Get that so that you can help your employees secure their own environments and, help yourself at the same time, which is a little sidebar thing here of when you see all of these things like that, what do you call it? The CVEs.
Mm-hmm.
And we recently, HC3 sent out their monthly vulnerability bulletin, and they pointed out, some very specific things that the CVEs that CISA had 14 new KEVs in May. And if you don't know what those things mean, you wouldn't know how to care about that. So we're going to do a little sidebar here just to explain that, what these terms mean. So a CVE is when it's a common vulnerabilities and exposure. It means somebody's found it. It's been publicly announced and submitted to these groups who monitor these things, and they give it an ID number, which is that CVE 2024-3080. So it's the 3080th common vulnerability and exposure assigned in 2024. That tells you a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's thousands a month.
And those databases are often used by a lot of things, but particularly like your vulnerability management software and stuff. It's using that database of CVEs.
Yeah, it's pulling that from there. And we got a link to a website that is called cvedetails.com. It's one that's hosted by a security scorecard that's quite helpful if you need to understand a specific, like you had that code and you wanted to go look it up, or you wanted to say, show me everything that has to do with a certain device. There's a lot of things you can do there. But if you see that there's a CVE, it means people know about this. If it's public, that means everybody knows about it.
Mm-hmm.
Even the bad guys and the good guys. Sometimes only one side knows about it. So,
yeah.
And it could be either one. The good guys side are the ones who want to protect you, are the ones that give you the CVE, and they're starting to track it and say, we got to fix this. And to know how bad it is, you have the CVSS, the Common Vulnerability Scoring System. And in making decisions, that's the code you want to know. Mm-hmm. Oh, there's a vulnerability. Is there a CVSS assigned to it? Meaning, it's the Common Vulnerability Scoring System saying, how bad is this? It's like, David, is this something I should be scared of?
Right. And the good thing about this is it takes all the guesswork out, because, if you ask 10 different cybersecurity people, you might get 10 different answers. So this takes all the guesswork out. Let's just go by the CVSS.
Yeah. And so it's 1 to 10, not a complicated scoring system. Anything with a 9 or higher is considered critical, needs to be dealt with.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty straightforward. And so you've got somebody that's defined that risk factor for you. But part of risk is also, I guess that's your impact. The likelihood, when they add that in, is where we understand our risk, which gives us the next score, which is the EPSS. And if it has one of these scores, you really want to pay attention to it, because it's taking it to the next level. Mm-hmm. And it's saying, what is the likelihood of this vulnerability actually being exploited in the wild based on what we know? Like, do we even see anybody caring about this? Do we even see anybody thinking about this? And then you get a 0 to 100% score. Okay? If there can be an exploit published but not used, you're going to be, a much higher kind of thing. But the minute that you get pegged out on that score, that's when you move into the CISA KEVs, or the known exploited vulnerabilities. And these are the ones that say they are actively being used to attack you. When you get 14 new ones in May, that's not a good sign for the rest of the year.
Yeah.
So there you go. You got the CVE is the ID code. CVSS says, how could, what would the impact be if this is used? EPSS says, what's the likelihood? And once that score gets pegged out, you're going to get a KEV, which is, we know it's actually being used.
Right.
So that's how you decide when you read these things in the news. We're telling you to read them, and then we're not telling you what it means when you do read them. So there you go. That's your piece. Hopefully it helps, and it's all. You can go get the podcast show notes for this episode and print them or translate or whatever you need to do.
Yeah, great bathroom reading.
Yeah, there you go. So that brings us to our last thing that is like the last thing we want to think about.
Yeah, it's like, wait a minute. It's hard enough worrying about everything down here on terra firma.
Yeah. And it's an article from Dark Reading, which is often dark reading. It's space being the final frontier for cyber attacks. Space, like out in space. So, there's all these things that are involved in what we do, and we think of it being here in terra firma and maybe going through the air a little higher, but you forget that there's really a bunch of satellites making stuff happen.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of things being controlled. And the imagining cyber attacks to anticipate risk unique to space is a matrix called Icarus, because nerds, if you're talking about cyber attacks in space, you're way above the rest of us. They're saying there are several reasons that you should realize that this is going to be a dominant form of conflict once things start moving further along on the areas that we're going. But particularly right now, we already have threats. And that has to do with how much satellites matter in our world.
Mm-hmm.
They matter a lot. I don't think people understand how much.
No. They control a lot of stuff.
Well, that, and they provide information that we're using to make decisions constantly.
Mm-hmm.
So the paths of the satellites are how they are able to control what happens. And you'll often hear them say, well, such and such satellite's going to pass over such and such at this day and time. And you'll see them do tests where we're going to point something at the space station. Because I have a little app on my phone. I can find the space station where it's at using that app, And it is cool to do, isn't it?
Have you seen the, I guess it's the SpaceX satellite train or whatever?
Yeah, it shows where they're tracking.
Yeah, well, you can see them come to the sky sometimes. Yeah, we have, I guess it was, a perfect night out or something recently. And we have people posting all over, our local social media pages
I've
about.
I've seen pictures, but I didn't know it was like ever seen it.
Yeah, people were putting it on. Of course, people thought it was UFOs, but they were putting. Did you see that? And then people posted videos of it and everything else. And of course, people were like, "Yeah, that's just the SpaceX satellites. You can see them all the time." But yeah, you can see them. It's pretty interesting to watch. You just, all of a sudden, you got like a dozen dots all in a row just fly across the sky.
Yeah. It is entertaining. But the big picture there is that's just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
And these things provide internet connectivity. They provide all kinds of data transmissions. They're how communications are going through those things constantly.
Mm-hmm.
And this is the big thing, GPS. GPS is all done via satellite.
Mm-hmm.
It's not done by some radio towers, by your cell phone towers. Global Positioning Satellite.
It's in the name.
So, I know. So if you do anything, so in healthcare, easy thing, ambulances, I need them to get where they need to be on the dot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's like if the GPS goes out, you can be like, we've got to hire people that are 55 and older so they can read a map.
Well, sometimes, like, and there's tools that we use, and Apple devices have the Find My feature, and then you can do Apple AirTags and all of those things, and it's cool to have because I have to use my watch to find my phone all the time, instead of running around looking for it. And I can put an AirTag in my luggage, so I can always know where it is, whether the airline does or not. I should know and be able to tell. So there's some great ways that you can use these tools, and I have my dad's iPhone where I can keep up with it. Not to keep up with him, but to keep up his phone for him. And he called me and he said, "I've lost my phone. I can't find it anywhere. Can you do that thing?" And I go look, and I was like, "Dad, did you go visit cousin Joey this morning?" He goes, "Yeah, I was over there." I was like, "It's on the road just outside of Joey's driveway on the side of the road. Here it is." And I did send it to him. He goes, "No, that's not where it is. I know where it is." I'm like, "That is where the blue dot is on the map that I just sent you." No. Now you say that, I remember I was helping them put some stuff in the truck, and I laid my phone down on the edge, on the tailgate of something, or the top, I don't remember, somewhere on the truck. And I'm sure it fell off when we drove off in the truck. And I was like, "When you turned out of the driveway is when it fell off." No, I'm sure I know where. And he called me back and he says, "I still can't find that thing." "Dad, go to the end of the driveway." And then I get another call from him. He goes, "That thing was probably 3 feet from that blue dot."
That's hilarious.
I know, it was great. And I was at the beach trying to relax, and I didn't have signal. I had to keep going back to get the Find My signal. And, I could get one signal at the pool, one at the beach, and one at the condo. And I'm like roaming around depending on what he's doing. But it is valuable stuff, even today. And it's going to become more valuable. And so the thing that they posit here is, and we know this has happened with servers and computers, where you put people in that work in the development.
Mm-hmm.
We did an episode where we talked about how they're willing to wait. They will spend the time if it's a couple of years. I mean, we just had one that came out. A couple of years they spent. So they get somebody in, and they're either working on the software or the parts that go in these satellites. And they're able to embed some malware. They don't have to care who owns the satellite, who's going to be using it, where it's going to go. They don't have to care. Just pay. And then now I've got something where they slip in one little piece inside it when they're building it, or a little piece of malware that can be triggered a certain way, goes into the software, and now they can remotely control. They have infected the satellites in production.
Yeah.
You don't even have to hack them remotely.
But they did a credit check.
Yeah, it's good stuff. It's good stuff. So while I don't have necessarily satellites being hacked in my concern list of high concerns, I am concerned about satellites not working for one reason or another. I mean, we know problems with the sun, storms on the sun have actually caused problems with satellites. We know that. We don't know what could cause problems, but if I've got to make sure that I can transport a patient from point A to point B, I'm going to worry about losing GPS. Yep. What am I going to do? And, how many other things are going to be impacted by that? And if that does mess up a whole bunch of other things, will that mess up my ability to run my business? So,
yeah. I wonder if ambulances have, old-fashioned maps in there just in case something goes wrong.
I often tell the story about when, I'm so old that that they were all excited showing me all the computers, which were huge things being mounted in the ambulances back in the day. And it was one that showed them drug interaction and one that helped them locate the patient. It was early GPS capabilities in the ambulances anyway, not early GPS. But the fact that software is so important, it's absolutely essential to their ability to operate. I don't know what their backup systems are anymore. I don't work directly with those anymore, but we're going to hope that they are worried about these things of what will be the backup systems. At least a local street map.
Yeah. That would be helpful.
Google Earth. Not going to be helpful if I don't know where on earth I am. But if I had a good idea, I can zoom in. Those kind of things. But yeah, those are important things. So there you go. There's all your BOLOs.
Yeah, there's a lot of different things we covered and a lot of unique things that we've covered. And learned about CVEs and KEVs and Icarus.
I know. So now you know how to read them.
Yep. All right, folks, that is our show for today. Thanks for listening. Be sure to share this out and leave us a review. We appreciate it. And remember, for Donna and myself, that HIPAA is not about compliance. It's about patient care.
Help me with HIPAA. Let's get it right. Protect your patients day and night. Donna and David, the experts on your side. Help me with HIPAA. Let's get it right.
You've been listening to the Help Me with HIPAA podcast, hosted by Donna Grindle and David Sims. The show created to help you with HIPAA. For more information or to ask us a question, visit our website at helpmewithhipaa.com. Neither Donna Grindle or David Sims are attorneys, and they do not offer binding legal advice concerning regulatory compliance. The information in this podcast should not be relied upon or construed as legal advice in any way. Consult your attorney for legal advice concerning compliance with HIPAA regulations.